It's Nicole Murray, and we are back creating community connections one at a time. Here with Caitlin, a domestic violence specialist for 180 Turning Lives Around in Hazlitt. First of all, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
I know it can be a complex topic to talk about, but can you tell me what your organization is all about?
So, 180 Turning Lives Around is the lead domestic violence and sexual assault agency for Monmouth County. We've been doing this really important work since the 70s. And I think, one of the greatest things that we can ever offer somebody is a really safe space to come and speak, or be in a safe space to live if they're in a situation that's not safe at home. So, we really do a whole wraparound service in terms of counseling, safe home, children's counseling, which includes art, dance, music, play therapy, just different ways for kids to express themselves without saying exactly what's going on, and really just give that opportunity to people to process what they've gone through and grow through.
Wow. That it's amazing. It's much needed. I think a very common misconception is that when I say abuse, it's just, well, I don't have bruises on me. How would you define abuse?
So, domestic violence is something that you're right, there's a huge misconception that if you're not bruised or showing marks,
Yeah.
it didn't happen. And the thing with domestic violence is it's not only physical abuse, it's verbal. It's mental, it's emotional abuse, it's power and control, which is by definition somebody has power and control over somebody else to do something throughout their day. And one of the biggest ones that we're seeing a huge uptick in right now is economic abuse. So with COVID and how the economy has been, we're seeing a lot of people that are talking about not having access to funds or being withheld from those funds and isolated from them, which it makes difficult for them to just kind of survive on a day to day, whether it's meeting their basic needs or getting their children back to school clothes. So that's something that we've actively been trying to assist folks with, especially with food insecurity and kind of branching people to having access to pantries at our sites. So these are other things that they don't really have to contend with. So when I think about domestic violence, I think of it in terms of a very broad spectrum
Yes.
of different varieties of things that people experience. And if something still sounds off to you as a person who's listening about it, just to kind of keep an open mind and believe where that person's coming from, because it
Yeah.
can be difficult to kind of express or even verbalize, because it's hard for an individual to kind of make sense of it themselves.
Now, we're going to get into some of the tools and resources
Sure.
available for victims and survivors, but any advice for someone, a third party that maybe suspects a family member or a friend is being abused, how they should go about the situation?
Sure. And I think that's wonderful that you bring it up, because 1 in 4 women is impacted by domestic violence in their lifetime. So, whatever variety of violence, verbal, mental, emotional abuse that they experience. And it's 1 in 9 men, which we kind of think is more or less an underreported statistic just because men don't typically come forward to
Yeah.
speak about it. And so, I think it's just important that there is, again, this allowance, this space, this communication to say, hey, you know what, you don't seem yourself. You just kind of seem a little more withdrawn. You seem intimidated. Can we talk? And just allowing for that door to remain open just a crack. So people, when and if they ever are willing to come forward to speak to somebody who's been kind of identified as a safe person, they can. And it's just kind of listening with open eyes and open ears, and just kind of being aware of a person's characteristic change.
It sounds like one of the most important components of that is if you approach with no judgment.
Always approach with no judgment, and just think about your own safety in regards to how you help. So when an individual's impacted by violence, it's really important to consider their own protective factors as the person that's the expert in their life. So just be very thoughtful and cautious about how you're providing them information. You don't want to blatantly give away, a 180 card to them if you think they might be in a situation. Just kind of assessing what their need might actually be before, blatantly trying to help. Put it on a piece of paper, put it under somebody's name, just to kind of give that person that allowance and that space, should that become an unsafe situation for them.
Now, we'll get into the specifics of your organization in a second. Can I
Sure.
just ask, how did the Me Too movement affect you guys?
So we experienced a very, very large uptick in individuals that were reporting sexual assaults as children, young adolescents, and even young adults that were finally coming forward in their adulthood,
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, I resonate with this. I resonate with the Me Too movement. This is something that happened to me, and I didn't even know you were available." So it was a jarring experience for a lot of us to hear that people were living with this burden for so long. But it was really amazing that they found us finally and were able to kind of process and explain their stories with no judgment and being heard for the first time. And I think that that gives people always a really wonderful opportunity to start their healing process and journey, whatever it may look like. So we are we are always ready and available, and we have been for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a very long time.
Yeah, something important I want to highlight, especially with the idea of the Me Too movement. It's not that the amount of incidents were any less. It's that it sounds like people weren't talking about it a lot
Yes.
until recently.
Yes, I think there have been a lot of societal movements and changes that have really brought a lot of awareness to sexual assault, domestic violence, mental health, and it's really important that we use formats like this to just allow for people to hear it for the first time and process it in their own way and feel comfortable with whatever the outcome is. So we're really excited to continue to move and groove with the next generation and figure out how to best do that, whether it's social media, podcasts, videos, whatever the case may be, but really giving people that opportunity to own their safety and have the warning signs and red flags that they may not know.
And it's okay to need help.
It's way okay to need help.
Way okay.
It's way okay. I tell everybody, I'm like, go to therapy. It's probably the best thing you could do for yourself, whether or not you have something traumatic going on. It's a really good, safe way to process your everyday, the stressors, and really
Yes.
giving it a healthy release to that. So I am pro therapy for everything all the time.
So, needing help. That means services, tools. I know there's quite a few that 180 offers. Talk to me about Chat 180, NJ.
So we have a chat line where individuals can reach out to us. I'm not entirely sure of the hours right off the top of my head, but they can reach out and say, hey, this occurred at work or this occurred at home, and I'm not really sure if it constitutes sexual assault or if it constitutes domestic violence. But it just really gives them that safe, confidential space for them to just kind of talk or process what's occurred with no judgment. And it's the same thing with our 24-hour hotline. You could call the 24-hour hotline and say, hey, I just got into an argument, there was name calling. You never have to say who you are, where you're from. You can literally just have a non-judgmental conversation with a trained counselor on the phone to help you figure out what might be your next best steps and how to safely do that. So those are really integral pieces to the work that we do and services that we offer within our community.
I know keeping the anonymity can be the difference between someone stepping forward, even just for a piece of advice,
Sure.
and withholding. Any other tools or resources you think people should be aware of?
I just, if in terms of tools and resources, I would just say the best tool you have is to be a non-judgmental ear. Listen to what a person is saying. Don't try to be the expert or the hero, because again, you can kind of put yourself at risk. But just offer them assistance in saying, hey, listen, I know 180 is around, and I know that their services are free and confidential, and you can reach out at any time. Maybe you want to give them a call. So just kind of giving that space for that individual to make the next best step for themselves.
Any story that maybe hits home for you a little bit more through your years in this work?
Yeah, so I've unfortunately had a lot of different experiences
Yeah.
when it comes to domestic violence, but I think that one of the greatest gifts that I ever got to hear is about a young family. She had 2 or 3 children, and she was more or less, scared to enter into the safe home. She was nervous that people were going to find out where she was, and, just had a lot of hesitancy. And I had a lot of experience with her throughout the years, and she had reached her last straw, and she said, you know what, I'm not going if I can't bring my dog. He's threatening my dog. And 180 kind of heard that call and took the opportunity to now make our safe home open to pets. So
Oh, that's
people
amazing.
have the opportunity to bring all of their family members, four-legged or not, because 71% of people who experience domestic violence in the home also report having threats made to their animals or
That's
injuries to their
awful.
animals. So we really wanted to make sure that we also were no longer going to be a barrier for people that needed to be safe. And so we've had bearded dragons and rabbits and cats and pit bulls and all of these amazing little animals that really just allowed for people to stay comfortable too while they were in a place that wasn't their own.
Oh, wow. That pet thing, that's huge. I don't know if
Huge.
I've ever heard that for any other.
We were the pilot program at our new safe home, which was built about 7 years ago, and we've got a lot of wonderful positive response, and we only hope to continue to grow that program as we continue to serve the residents of Monmouth County, because it is so important for people to not allow for that to be a barrier for
Oh
them
my
anymore.
gosh, yes. So that's a major accomplishment. Any big goals you guys are trying to tackle next in the near future?
Big goals. I think that our goal always is that we want people to come to us, doors open always. We've been free of charge. We've never had to charge for services. We want to continue to do that for the residents of Monmouth County. We never ever want to be in a position where can't come to us. And so I think that, our biggest goal is to really track and adjust what's happening now and how we can help people in the future. And who knows what that's going to bring? Maybe it's going to be more spaces for animals or another shelter or safe home. But we're really excited about our prospects and the future work that we'll do for the organization.
Let's talk about the other end of the spectrum.
Sure.
Biggest challenges.
Biggest challenges. Well, I think for anybody, big challenges right now is funding. We are always kind of tracking and adjusting in terms of what our needs are and how we're going to get those funds. So we do a lot of fundraising in order for us to have those non-restricted dollars to make sure that people never have to pay for counseling, or if they need vet bills paid for their dogs, that they can go and go to the clinic and make sure that everything's up to date. So I think just generally, funding, but overall, I think that domestic violence and sexual assault have been a really taboo topic for a very long time. And we're still trying to untie those knots of misinformation about what domestic violence is and how we can support our community members that are experiencing it.
So, for anyone who's watching, listening, how can people get involved? And do you ever collaborate with local businesses?
Yes, we are always looking to get involved with local businesses, and we're asking our community members to come out and collaborate with us too. We have a lot of amazing volunteers that work with us and respond to police departments and respond to the ERs when an individual's in need of advocacy services. So we're always looking for volunteers to help us in that space and really be the first person in the first line of resources to those individuals. And then in terms of our community support, we've had a lot of amazing community responses to domestic violence and sexual assault. And we really just want to make sure that we keep doing that. So going to large businesses and talking about domestic violence, workplace violence, how to keep yourself safe, how to recognize those signs, and just really having that opportunity to make people have awareness. So I always say action, awareness, and advocacy is our three biggest tools, and we hope to continue to have that in other forms as well.
Sounds like the tone around this subject is changing.
Yes, I always say we're coming from a strengths-based and an empowerment approach. We want to empower people to be in charge of their lives, empower people to be in charge of the direction that things are going to go to, and really have them live a really fruitful, amazing life post domestic violence or post sexual assault. And it's possible. It's just about taking that first step. And we're ready, willing, and able to open our arms to those individuals that may need our assistance.
Any advice for anyone who wants to start a nonprofit, just started a nonprofit, that you could give them?
If I had any advice, I would say it would be to kind of look around and see what other resources are available in your community and figure out ways of what maybe gaps are missing in those services and how you guys can collaborate together as two community, nonprofits that want to partner and, change Monmouth County or, change the state. So I would just kind of say, just finding that little niche thing that nobody else is doing and allow for yourself to grow from that.
Now, before I let you go, what do you wish more people understood about your line of work?
I wish that people understood that it's not a victim's fault. And I know it sounds very, very cliche, but it certainly doesn't matter what an individual's wearing or what they've said. Being called a name, pushed, threatened is never acceptable in any type of relationship, whether you feel like you have the healthiest one. And so I think that we just all need to realize that relationships, whether it's early friendships, need to come from a place of respect and learning how to respect another person and their boundaries in order for us to kind of stop this cycle from happening.
I cannot thank you enough for joining us here to talk about such an important topic today. If you or anyone you know is affected by abuse or sexual assault, please call the number on the screen. My name is Nicole Murray. We are creating community connections one at a time. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.